The following webinar was recorded at Dirigo Safety in Auburn, Maine on February 27th, 2024, involving the Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, managed and facilitated by Dirigo Safety. Scott Maddox, the CEO of Dirigo Safety, was on hand along with Jim Willis, Lynn Doucette, Patrick Hood, and Dave Furland, all discussing with Maine law enforcement leaders the Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program.
Well, everybody, welcome to Dirigo Safety's briefing on Maine accreditation. And we have some very outstanding speakers and presenters here today. Before I start it off with Scott, our CEO, I am just going to let you know that on board today is Jim Willis, our Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program Manager, Lynn Doucette, Law Enforcement Police Consultant. I'm expecting Brian to be able to sneak in here in a few minutes to be able to give some of his experiences. We're catching him in between meetings, I hope. And of course, Pat Hood is going to be here to talk about assessment and law enforcement police reviews. But I'd like to turn it over to Scott right now. He is our CEO of Dirigo Safety, and he's going to be giving us some opening comments.
Thanks, Lou. Welcome, everybody. And yes, I'm Scott Maddox, the owner and CEO of Dirigo Safety. And I just wanted to give just a brief statement on background and where we're going here. After 26 years in law enforcement, I started this company in 2016 for the purpose of giving back to the profession that had treated me very, very well. My priority has been to make Dirigo Safety an advocate for public safety by providing competent, trustworthy, and experienced support for law enforcement. And I'm proud to say that in 8 years doing this job, I think we're doing well with that mission. One of the ways that we provide that support is through state accreditation. This is a process that undoubtedly benefits law enforcement everywhere in Maine. In fact, it increases the professionalism of law enforcement all over the country. A true profession regulates itself. And if we don't do it, somebody else is. So I think that working on accreditation is a worthy business goal for Dirigo Safety. Since 2020, we've been lucky enough and quite frankly, pretty honored, I think, to manage the law enforcement accreditation for the Maine Chiefs of Police. And I can confidently report to you all today that we've done an excellent job enabling some great departments to achieve that accreditation. When we took over the program at the request of the Maine Chiefs in 2020, there were approximately 5 departments that had been working on state accreditation. Today, there are 24 that have received full accreditation and about 9 that are currently in the final stages. State accreditation is a demanding process, but it can be done. And today's webinar, you're going to hear from some of the professionals running the program who will support what I'm telling you. State accreditation is a process that any department, no matter what their resources are, can achieve. And we're here in your corner. We have the resources, the experience, and the expertise to walk through the process. In closing, I hope that everybody will strongly consider law enforcement accreditation. It's beneficial for you, your department, your community, and you can rely on us to help get you through. So thank you, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of this presentation.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm going to ask Hillary if she might be able to turn on the participants' cameras so that they can participate. I want to remind everybody first off that this is being recorded because we'd like to be able to show it to other people at a later date type of thing. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim Willis now. Jim is our Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program Manager, and he's going to give us a briefing. So Jim, you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and then getting into your presentation itself?
Sure, thank you, Lou. My name is Jim Willis. I recently retired from a police chief position. I started in law enforcement, I don't know, somewhere 36, 37 years ago, I think, at the Hancock County Sheriff's Department. I worked there for about 16 years, left as a lieutenant. I had a lot of involvement with forensic interviewing with sex abuse cases during the last years there. Created a multidisciplinary team that looks a lot like what you're seeing DHS do nowadays with their centers. I became the police chief in Mount Desert in 2003. Along the way, got on the board of the Maine Chiefs of Police Association. I was their president during 2014. Along about that same time, I was finishing up another college degree, and I was asked to also become the police chief in the town of Bar Harbor, our neighbors. So busy time in life there. I continued to be chief of 2 agencies for 10 years up until the time I retired, which was last August. MLEAP, you're going to hear us say MLEAP a lot. What does that even mean? It's Maine's law enforcement accreditation program. You'll hear different states call it different things, but there are accreditation programs all over the country. There are national models, local models, and this one that the Maine Chiefs embraced was really designed to make it work for any size agency in Maine. The idea came from back when, if any of you know Phil Crowell, he used to be the police chief in Auburn. He and Jason Moen worked together quite a bit to come up with the idea and presented us with their idea for accreditation in Maine to have an attainable program. Some of the national models are really quite expensive and even require full-time staff to manage. And we knew that many of our smaller agencies wouldn't be able to do that. So at the time, the executive board of the Maine Chiefs united, and those that were going to be the presidents in the coming years agreed to carry the program forward. So that's probably back, I think 2012 or 13 when we began talking about it. And then we started to think about, boy, how do you create an accreditation program? And we were able to approach some members of a group called Accreditation. That's the national body of accredited agencies, and sort of just ask for help. And we got a lot of help from states that were similar to how Maine is set up, small agencies, and a lot of us with a few larger ones. So we formed a group that I remember the academy director being on it, several police chiefs, the colonel of the state police, lieutenant colonel was involved, probably 10 or 12 people. And we really spent a couple of years going to meetings, going through standards manuals, trying to make it fit for Maine. And the end result of that was the first edition of what we call our standards manual. The standards manual, Pat, this might be a good time to drop that in chat. All these documents I'm going to talk to you about are on the Maine Chiefs of Police Association's website. Pat's going to drop that into the chat for you. The program manual is there, the standards manual, any applications that you'd need to get into the program, and all that. So some of those forms will need a little updating. Lou told you I'm the program director. I've been the committee chair for the Maine Chiefs Accreditation committee for the last, since its inception until I retired. So for like 10 years, and I had a lot to do with hiring program directors, and I find myself now being a program director, and I think I'm in my 7th day. So I've got a bit of a learning curve there to learn how to do this side of it. But I thought I'd spend our time today sort of telling you about the program and where it came from. Well, I guess we've got that right on the screen for you now. Thank you. So if we think about the Maine Chiefs and why do the Maine Chiefs do it, I just got into the Constitution and bylaws of the Maine Chiefs. A lot of you may not be familiar with it, and the purpose statement I think sums it up. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to read that. The purpose for which the association is organized are to secure a closer official and personal relationship with Maine police officials, to secure a unity of action in law enforcement matters, to enhance the standards of police personnel, police training, and the police profession generally, to devise ways and means for the perfection of a uniform police system within the state of Maine, to advance the prevention and detection of crime, to uphold the constitutional rights of all individuals, and to promote the profession of law enforcement as an integral and dedicated component of modern day society, sworn to the protection of life and property. So if I'll go back to a service that the Maine Chiefs used to perform more often than maybe they do now, and um, they used to call them departmental reviews, where your town or city could ask for the Maine Chiefs to put together a group of professional police chiefs and come in and do an evaluation of the functioning of your police department. Everything from the condition of your building to how a shift is worked, how cars are stopped, and the whole thing. Those opportunities usually only came about during times of problems and often could be viewed as negative. I've been involved in one or two of them. And reflecting back to Phil, when he was president, he asked to go out on one of those. And I remember when he came back, he asked me if I'd ever seen an evidence room that was built on 2x12s on the essentially the attic of a highway garage without any locks on it. And I smiled and said, "There's probably more than one, Phil." And I think we all recognize that, you know, while we've come a long ways, there really isn't a standard way. So when I was a fairly new chief, I got thinking about that. You know, what would I do if the Maine Chiefs were asked to come review my agency? I'd really like to know what they're going to look at. So I made some phone calls and said, "Can I have your template? I'd like to look at that." The answer was no, you can't. We don't really have a template because it's different. It's tailored for each agency. And when the Maine Chiefs were hired to do an agency review, the end report belongs to the community that hired the Maine Chiefs, so they don't redistribute it. So I hit a pretty hard brick wall, and pair that with what Phil was talking to me about, and he said there must be a way we could provide some good guidance so people, you know, there's a roadmap to how to professionally administer a police department, and the answer to that is MLEAP, our accreditation program. Um, the program is divided into 12 chapters that, you know, the first one is it has to do with administration and organization. The next one is professional standards and conduct. The next one is training. The next is personnel. Another one is records, information, and management. Use of force, law enforcement operations, unusual situations, communications, processing and transportation, and finally, court security, along with property and evidence management. Those are the chapters. Each of those chapters has several standards laid out under it. And in all, there's a little, I think, around 160-ish standards. It's changed a little over time, but in total, there's 160. So when we were getting ready to roll the program out to go live, we realized we needed somebody to do the work of running it, and we hired our first program manager. We put on a series of trainings that were designed to be held at Maine Chiefs Association conferences, particularly the winter one, to hopefully enhance some attendance. And we began to train our first chiefs and assessors. For new agencies that want to come into the program, that there is a familiarization training. Pat may talk to you about this a little bit more later, but that's now online. That's not a class you have to go to in person. Dirigo hosts it for free on their training site. So as we got going, one of the other accrediting bodies out there is CALEA. That is a much higher standard than what MLEAP is. And when we built MLEAP, we said that anybody that's CALEA accredited in Maine, by showing us proof of current accreditation, they would be accepted into our program without having to provide further proof. So our first agencies were those 4 or 5 agencies that were CALEA accredited. And then we kind of, for lack of a better term, tripped a little bit. Our program director was really busy managing several accreditation programs, and as the committee chair, I began to hear about it, that calls weren't getting returned timely, and people were really anxious to get started in the process and were frustrated that it was taking some time. So that program director decided that there was just too much to do managing so many, and decided to get done, and that led us to partnering with Dirigo Safety. I was involved a lot with the first contracts with Dirigo. And I guess I'll just stop here and give a big shout to Sean O'Leary, because it's really his efforts and the people that work at Dirigo that took the program off the ground and have gotten us to over 24 agencies now that are accredited in Maine. Currently, the contract with Dirigo, between Dirigo and the Maine Chiefs to administer our MLEAP program, runs through 2025. I don't expect that to be interrupted for anything. The other exclusive thing that we have is another partnership with a company called Power DMS. Power DMS is an accreditation. It's a software platform that you use to manage lots of things within a police agency. But if you're going to do our accreditation program, you have to use Power DMS to do it. We tried it without it once, and it wasn't good. It led to a lot of problems, and the assessment process just took a lot more work than necessary. So we made the switch to just become exclusive with Power DMS, which also offered some benefits. We're able to have a content hub. We've promoted that a little bit, but that's sort of a warehouse of all documents of interest to Maine law enforcement. We get that for free because of this exclusive partnership. Moving over into cost, what's it cost to be accredited? If in order to buy what's needed for Power DMS, that's called Power Standards. You don't need their full suite. You only need their Power Standards, and it's the Maine Chiefs have an agreement that allows agencies in Maine that are larger than 51 sworn to get that for $650 a year. And if you're under 50 sworn, it's $550 a year. That's an annual recurring fee for Power Standards from Power DMS. And the only other fee that is involved for the accreditation is for the MLEAP program itself. And for non-CALEA agencies, that's $750 a year. So for around a little under $1,500 a year, you're all in. And that was really a big focus of the Maine Chiefs when we created it, was to make sure this was affordable and attainable by everyone in Maine that wanted to do it. We wanted the cost to be reasonable, which kind of takes me to assessors now. And our assessors are all volunteers. The police chiefs that were involved and those we talked to at the time and since then have continued just to do what we do in Maine, and that's help each other out. All of our assessors work full-time jobs at police agencies in Maine, and when it's time to do an assessment, that's just an extra thing to do that's on their plate, and their chief allows them to do it, and there's generally no compensation involved. There is some language in the manual for expenses for travel and things like that, and to my knowledge, it's never been used because everyone just does it in kind. If I need it from you today, I'll give it back to you tomorrow. Our MLEAP committee, there's a formal makeup of who's on the committee. That's 5 police chiefs, a sheriff, state law enforcement officer at the command level, and criminal justice director, a criminal justice academy director. And that committee has the actual authority to award accreditation. If you go through the process and you're told you're good to go, a final report is prepared. We're actually working on one this week for Sabatis. Everything's looking good there. And that committee that I just described will take a vote on whether or not to award you MLEAP accreditation. If you get that, we will come to your town council, county commissioners, whichever meeting you'd like, and present the chief and his team with a plaque and say some good things about the work you had to do to get there. One more partnership to highlight, Lou, is our partnership with the Maine Municipal Association. We really wanted to get some buy-in from the risk pool where most of us get our insurance from, our liability insurance. And when we built the program, we presented them with the first manual and said, what do you think about that? And they actually spent some money and had their law enforcement liability attorney review the entire manual for us, make some edits, which were incorporated. And then they came back with an offer of telling us that anyone that becomes accredited under our program will enjoy an annual 15% reduction in their liability insurance from that risk pool because they see that much value in what it does to minimize risk and professionalize agencies. And that continues. The other thing that the Maine Municipal Association does is awards grant funding. I think they do 10 grants every year or every other year for $5,000 a piece to help agencies become accredited. You can choose how you want to spend that money. You can use it to pay for Power DMS. You can pay your program fees, or some agencies get a little help with the policies and procedures needed to become accredited through MLEAP. The policies and procedures are probably 80% of the work. So if you've got a good set to work from, you're pretty good to go. As Scott said earlier, we've got over 24 agencies accredited, another 9 working towards it. And each agency that's accredited stays that way for 3 years. And then we go through the process again, just like the first time. Lou, that's pretty much the summary. I guess I would also add that if any of you are interested, I printed off a list of who's accredited now. I'm thinking you probably have friends and neighbors you could go talk to who have already done this work. Those of us here at Dirigo, I also work as a law enforcement liaison for the Bureau of Highway Safety through Dirigo. I wear several hats, and I'm happy to get in the car and come see any of you any day to help, as is Pat and anybody else on our team. But if you, I'll go over the list, I guess, of agencies. It's Falmouth, Ellsworth, Brunswick, Westbrook, Jay, York County Sheriff's Office, Farmington PD, Boothbay Harbor PD, Old Town, Berwick, South Berwick, Bath, Somerset SO, Gorham, Brewer PD, Kennebunk, Topsom PD, Hamden PD, Elliott, Aroostook SO, Buxton PD, Damariscotta, and Augusta. Those are all the non-CLIA agencies. So you can see from top to bottom of Maine, we've got people that are doing the work, and I'm sure you could give a call and get some help if you're interested. Thank you.
Okay, outstanding. So as you can see, what I've been doing is I'm trying to capture some of the notes, and I put it on the class note board, which I post every now and again through the webinar. You guys are welcome to screenshot that as part of your own notes type of thing. And I'm writing as quickly as I can. And remember, I don't have spell check as I'm doing this, so I might have a misspelled word or two here or there. Jim, I have a follow-up question. You know, as you go around the state and you talk to these different chiefs, what is one of the biggest obstacles for chiefs to actually become accredited? Like, why aren't there, everybody is engaging in this accreditation process? What would be the number one reason that a chief would give to us to say, it's just, what's the issue?
Yeah, I think they feel overwhelmed. Is that, boy, this is so much work, and really, I don't have to do it. Why would I? And I think that the answer to that is accreditation forces you to look at the things that we don't always look at because we get busy. Being a police chief is a really busy job. And if your annual evidence audit rolls by and you missed it and summer season's coming, you really never get back to it. And then one day there's that piece of property you can't find, and now you have a crisis. If under accreditation, it forces you to look at it. Somebody's going to come check, show us your report, and it just gives you that sense of accountability. But I think they get intimidated, Lou, by the volume of work, and that's a bit of a false thing because you can work through this. Some agencies take a year and a half to do it. I've seen agencies do it in 2 months. It's really just having the dedicated staff to work your way through it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Chief, I hope you stay on. We'll see if we get some questions at the end that you might be able to help with. I want to bring on to board Lynn Doucette, who was a law enforcement public consultant. She's going to talk about some of her practical experiences dealing directly with the chiefs, with their policies, with the accreditation process. Lynn, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you might want to share with us.
Thank you, Lou. For those who don't know me, my name is Lynn Doucette, and I retired as a patrol lieutenant from the Brunswick, Maine Police Department in the fall of 2022, and got hired on here as a law enforcement policy and accreditation consultant. And that was that was primarily my role the last few years as a lieutenant with Brunswick. I had the pleasure of getting Brunswick to MLEAP accreditation and was one of the first outside the CALIA agency departments to do so. So I definitely learned trial by fire, much more versed in it now, and I'm personally currently running 20 agencies accreditation. So any chief who says it's too much work to do one, I will disagree with that because I'm running 20. So if I can do 20, I'm sure one agency can handle their own. It is not impossible. It is a lot of work, I will admit. It's time consuming, but there's nothing that isn't obtainable for proofs throughout those standards. There's currently, there were 162, but we've eliminated 4 that just didn't really fit the program. So we're down to 158 standards through those 12 chapters that Jim explained. And I can guarantee that every agency in the state of Maine, no matter what size, if you're just an agency with 4 or 5 full-time guys, all the way up to our Portland PDs and Bangor PDs can make this happen. So there's really no excuse if you want to do it. It's definitely doable. Policy wise, Jim mentioned that that's 80% of your proofs. I would even venture that it's probably closer to 90. Your policies are primarily your most important aspect of achieving MLEAP accreditation. Every standard, for the most part, there are a few that don't, but for the most part has a written directive requirement, and that written directive for most agencies will be within SOP policies and procedures, but it could also just be a memorandum that would cover it as well. So if you think that you need to put a little more time and investment in your policies, you can reach out to me and I can talk you into what needs to be done. If you're far off, we definitely have that service that we can go over your policies. MLEAP requires somewhere, I'm going to say 50-ish to 60 policies that you're going to need. So if you're in a small agency who is just running off MCJA's mandatories and that's all you have, you definitely want to give me a call so we can get you up to speed. But if you feel that your policies are good and in place, then you definitely can pull the trigger on this process. As Jim mentioned, once you start it, you have 2 years to complete it. So that's by far plenty of time to do so. If you are ready and dedicated, as he mentioned, 2 or 3 months, it definitely can be done within that time frame. Dirigo Safety does offer policy development services, and we also offer MLEAP program services. So if you're a small agency that wants to do this, but you don't have staffing that you can dedicate to do so, you can definitely hire us to do that job for you. And I think that's pretty much what I do here. So if you have any questions about MLEAP as this moves forward, don't hesitate to give me a call. And I believe Lou is going to put up all our contact information at some point. Feel free to email me or call me anytime. That's what I'm here for. Thank you.
Okay, right on, Lynn. Thank you very much. I got a follow-up question, Lynn. Can you give us a couple examples of how CALIA differs from the Maine LEAP? Like, I keep hearing, CALIA, I know, and I'm hearing, CALIA is much bigger. We know that, and it involves many, many more policies. So give us an idea of what CALIA might ask that Maine LEAP doesn't, how Maine LEAP why Maine LEAP is such a good fit for that smaller agency.
Absolutely. So the one thing I know that keeps a lot of people away from doing, I say people, agencies, away from CALIA is a lot to do with their holding cells. And I believe they require dedicated staff. So most agencies in the state that have short-term holding cells, your staff that's watching a prisoner is the officer that arrested them. There's no staffing in the jail. So that does a lot of agencies in. I know Lewiston, for an example, had holding cells, but with the county being the town over, they had to do away with their holding cells so that they could meet the CALIA standards. CALIA is 470-ish, if I'm not mistaken, standards. So considerably larger process than MLEAP 158. I will readily admit I am not CALIA versed, so I don't know what else might hold them up. But I know to get CALIA accredited, that is a more difficult and challenging task than Maine law enforcement program is. Ours was designed for Maine agencies, and it has been maintained so that we can make sure that the smallest agencies in our state would be able to access that level of accreditation if they so choose to do so.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you. Thank you for that. They sums it up pretty good. At least gives us one nice example of how this differs. I'm looking for Brian. I don't see him on just yet. Hopefully he can join us later. Pat, if you don't mind, I'm going to have you go next. Patrick Hood is our, I'm trying to share the screen with you guys, is our law enforcement, is a law enforcement police review consultant. He also does the assessments. He's here to talk a little bit about what that assessment process might look like, whether it be self-assessment or the team of assessors actually comes in and reviews the department. So Pat, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll let you talk about yourself a little bit, as well as some of the key points about assessment you'd like to share.
Lou, thanks. I appreciate it, and certainly appreciate being here with this team of really experts in an area that I did not spend a lot of time in my law enforcement career. I recently retired from the Maine State Police. I was a troop commander at the Central Field Troop. Spent my career in uniform really on that operational front, just by the way that we're designed. Maine accreditation did come to play with the state police, as Jim had indicated. A couple of our command staff members were part of that original team, and we talked about it through our agency, and everything's bigger, or appears to be bigger with us, with the state police. So it made it a bit more challenging. And the piece that really puts me at ease at this point is Dirigo Safety offers a team to come and help your particular agency work through challenges, which most likely will be the pitfall, as we've kind of talked about that up to this point, that you may think that's keeping you from that accreditation status. But as Jim indicated, he's a law enforcement liaison. That's also my role at Dirigo Safety. But I also have another responsibility, and that's policy review. And Lynn touched on policy. And probably one of the biggest benefits that I can see for the law enforcement agency applying or going through the accreditation is having a much better familiarization with those SOPs that we all go by, but there's not a way outside of this to keep them fresh. I recently spoke with a police chief down in Midcoast, Maine, and actually ran into one of his officers, and he said, the chief is giving me tests on policy. So I hear it from both sides. Now the police officer is being challenged, but it's also the police chief making sure that their membership is up to date on these policies that can change from year to year. And having this accreditation in place allows you to do those things that sometimes you may choose not to, because it's not as enjoyable. It takes more time than maybe what is front and center. But let me just talk quickly about my role. I am seeking to be an assessor for the Maine the MLEAP program. I, again, came from the state police, but now belong to an agency that is accredited. So I fit the qualifications needed, and you can see those qualifications there at that website that I posted earlier. But the first thing that I've done to get to this point, to prepare myself to be an assessor, really to help the other agencies come on board, is I did attend a class through Dirigo Safety, which is the MLEAP familiarization course. And it's a better understanding of how MLEAP works for those of us who are yet to go through it. My next steps for that is to continue to take some Power DMS University classes that will help me better understand how Power DMS supports accreditation. So it's another software program, as Jim spoke about, but being familiar with that, and I do also plan to spend time with Lynn, who is an expert again on all things accreditation when it comes to that Power DMS. But more importantly, is spending time with some of my neighbor agencies down my way who have been through the process. I want to talk to them about what it was really like at that granular level so that I can share those stories, for lack of a better term, with other agencies that we may run into in our day-to-day job as law enforcement liaisons to help them get to that next level. Jim talked about the 12-step processes that an agency would go through. So 158 roles and responsibilities that each agency needs to check the box for. And I immediately went down to the unusual event category, as maybe some of us who really like to get into the, I'm not sure what's coming around the next corner, but what is it that I can learn in talking to these agencies that have come over those hurdles that I could share with the next agency to get them better prepared. And I just like to close, Lou, by saying, in our job, our chosen profession, it's changed in my 25 years, not all for the best, but we are questioned more about the things that we do, why we do them, really with little backing on understanding how police work really works in the field. So if you're able as an agency to show your community leadership, whether it be a county commissioner, town select board, legislature, that you've taken the appropriate steps to show that we act and perform the same way as every agency that's accredited in the state of Maine, it only adds to that level of increased profession that will hopefully continue to carry us through the next 100 years to make this an attractive profession. So Lou, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, outstanding. So I have a follow-up question for you too as well. You know, you mentioned that this kind of forces the police leaders to look at their policies because they're always evolving. Some policies evolve or change more frequently than others. Can you give us maybe an example of one of those policies that you have seen in your history or frequently changes? Like every year, it's one of those policies that somebody in the police department needs to go and look at their policy to see if it is now still the accepted standard or still in legal compliance with their police operations. Do you have an example you might be able to provide to us?
Yeah, Lou, certainly one that comes to mind, at least for operational concerns, is police pursuits. There are many agencies across the state of Maine that have a "we will not pursue" policy, and we had a much different understanding of ours, but there are certain criteria that need to be met, and you need to know that information in the moment. You can't stop and pull over and say, am I in compliance if something negative happens? So that's really a great opportunity, not just for someone who is seeking supervisory roles, but for the men and women that are on patrol at 2 or 3 in the morning that need to make that split-second decision, and they can or will benefit from a refreshed review of those policies to make sure that they are making the best decision that is within law and policy.
Okay, yeah, that's an outstanding example and directly to the point of my question. So I've asked everybody if you have any questions to throw it in the chat box. And of course, you can raise your hand as well through the Zoom class itself. I tried to ask a couple clarifying questions that I thought you might be interested in learning more about. I also have the class note board up. I will show that one more time before we close down so that you can take a screenshot of those notes if you want. These are the notes that I wrote. I did not hear these gentlemen and ladies speak about their topic beforehand. So I prepared these notes on the fly as I'm listening to them. So I might have missed a good point or two. So please forgive me for that. But I wanted us to be able to at least share some of the points some of my takeaways that I had. So I'll make sure that I show that one more time again. And I'm going through the list here and I'm looking to see if Brian has joined us. And unfortunately, Brian has not, and I am sorry for that because he would have been able to bring some significant experience statewide as to why the Maine accreditation program is so important and beneficial for police leaders. Pat brought up a great point before I turn it back over to Scott. Pat brought up a great point, and that is it brings about a consistency in policing actions throughout the state, meaning that, you know, if you are consistent and you have similar policy and you are accredited with, you know, 24 other departments, say, we already have at least a couple, right? A couple dozen. If you are in compliance and you are operating with the same policies and similar function and you have the accreditation, and something occurs in your agency that the community calls into question, well, you have all those different agencies buttressing your police work. You have all this consensus that that is the proper police work to have. You have all these different things that you can point to say, I am showing due diligence. I am doing my level best to make sure that the police services that are being provided in my community is actually being done. And I think that really strengthens the role, your job as the police leader in bringing that agency up to a certain level and beyond. And I also think that further insulates you from that type of criticism that we see is going around across the country right now, right? We know that police chiefs' average tenure is 3 years or less now. We know that they seem to be easily discarded once the community is sick of them. So it pays to have a little bit of insulation around you as you are making these decisions. And moreover, when I speak with the new police officers, they love having direction. You know, we would complain that, oh, there's too many rules and regulations and things like that. But the new police officer really likes to have direction on how to do things. And good policy really explains how to do many, many, many things. Anyway, those are my takeaways, and I am very honored to be able to sit here and kind of facilitate this meeting to transfer information off to you people. And I am going to turn this back over to Scott for some closing comments. I'm also going to share a screen with you guys. As he does that, I'll cut away from his comments. I'll share you a closing screen, which is the contact information for everybody. And then I'll come back to Scott, who will actually close the presentation.
Lou, I think we have a question. Christian has his hand raised. I don't know if we can hear him or not, but Christian, if you're there, go ahead.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So Lou was reminding me that I wanted to add to those who were unsure or looking at accreditation for the first time, that my old agency, Augusta PD, I served in a role very, very similar to what Lynn Doucette did. And one of the biggest things that we took away from it at the time was not just the consistency, which is very, very important, especially to new officers, as Lou also said, but the transparency. And then when you're looking for buy-in, not only from your towns and your city councils and those in the political realm, but also if you share, and I'm uniquely qualified to talk about the social media aspect of law enforcement, when you share that with your community, that your agency is going through this process because you want to be the best of the best, you want to be transparent with everything you do, and hold yourself to the highest standard of Maine law enforcement accreditation. I think that's really, that engagement with your community is a huge selling point that may not be known at first. And depending on how you as a leader share that among your departments within the different municipality, county government, state government type things that you're dealing with, I think that by itself is something that really shows everyone that's working for you and with you and around you that you're taking this so much more seriously than maybe somebody else who doesn't want to put the time or effort in. So I just wanted to share that because we went through accreditation. I think we were the second agency in the state to get accredited at that time, and it was still kind of a learning thing. I went through the assessor's training as well. We did all the proofs at Augusta PD by hand then. We weren't using Power DMS. And doing that experience, having that experience, I think the engagement piece and the transparency part to your leaders above you that are paying the bills, I think is very, very important to share. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Outstanding point, Christian. I added that to our class noteboard. I think that is a terrific point to make. Before I turn it over to Scott, I want to wish Sabatis well, because if I understand correctly, they're the next one up to bat. So thumbs up. I'm hoping to post their picture soon in the Northern New England Law Enforcement News video that I hope you guys are all getting every 2 weeks. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our boss, Scott, if you would like to close us out, sir.
All right, thank you, Lou. And just real quick, I'm just going to dovetail on Christian's statement and just take it up one little notch. And, you know, everything he said is 100% true, I think, and bringing these things back to your community to, you know, boost your presence and your professionalism in the community is great. But I also want to add another thought that we all know of instances and departments where something bad and negative happens, and that downgrades our credibility as a profession all over. Accreditation does the opposite. And I think that the more agencies that sign on, each and every one puts an individual piece into the puzzle and increases the professionalism of law enforcement as a whole. And our goal is to continue to increase our professionalism and make law enforcement, you know, into the vaulted profession that we all have dedicated our careers to. So thanks for all those thoughts, Lou. I appreciate you running this webinar. Great job, Patrick, Jim, Lynn. Thanks for all of your contributions. You guys are doing a wonderful job out there. And to everybody who joined us, I hope that this has raised some interest. As you can see, it's an achievable and an important process. So if we can help you whatsoever to answer questions or however, please reach out and take care and have a good day, and everybody be safe. Thank you.